a throbbing pain at the back of my skull. The world was dizzying for a moment, and I couldn't properly make out shapes or colors. As I came to, I realized I was handcuffed to what looked like a school desk. A quick study of my surroundings confirmed this. There was a man right alongside me, also on the floor, cuffed to a desk. Behind him was another, and behind him another. I was in some kind of classroom with at least a dozen or so people, all of whom seemed to be chained up. My eyes took in the surrounding posters and artwork. There were children's drawings and safety reminders scattered across the wall, most of them older than I was. Then my attention went to the front of the class, to the blackboard, where a teacher should have been instructing. In its place was a simple, concise message written in chalk, large enough for all of us to read. Tornado drill, 8:05 a.m. I checked the clock on the wall. According to the time, we only had a few minutes before the event was supposed to happen, so I talked fast. Hey you! Where are we?" I asked, kicking the foot of the man next to me. His eyes flared at me suspiciously.
"Like I would know? How should I know? We could be in hell for all I know."
I decided not to bother talking to him anymore and turned to my left. A petite young woman was there. "What about you? Do you remember how we got here?" I asked, yanking on the handcuffs. The sound they made as they rattled against the desk echoed everywhere.
"I was in the mall with my boyfriend, and we were headed toward the food court when I don't remember anything after that,"
she admitted timidly. I could tell by the look on her face she was more worried about the boy than her own safety, but something told me that pretty soon that would change. The clock struck 8:05 a moment later, and suddenly a shrill, scratchy noise came over the PA intercom. The system had to date back to before the 1980s, I thought, as I tried to cup my free hand over my ear and hold my head against the desk.
"Attention, class of 2021. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance,"
a strange voice announced. It was difficult to say for sure what gender it was. It didn't sound quite human. Then there was a sharp click, and a grainy old recording of the pledge came over the speakers. As it finished, all of us looked at one another in confusion and fear. What the hell was going on?
"Attention, room 3. Your tornado drill will begin now. Move to the hallway."
"How the hell are we supposed to do that?" I said out loud. Not that I expected the strange machine to respond. Instead, there was a loud rattling from above, making me look at the ceiling for the first time. Above every desk was an air vent, and on cue those vents opened. Abruptly, loud noises erupted, and shards of glass spit out from the vents straight toward us. I reacted in a moment, yanking my body toward the floor as the broken glass sliced across the back of my neck. Using the top of the desk as cover, I did my best to huddle there, though a portion of my thigh and right foot were damaged from the sudden rush of projectiles. Others in the class weren't so lucky. A man sitting 2 desks in front of me had a glass shard impaled straight in his neck. A woman had several hit her across the cheek, and the rain of sharp blades continued to fall.
"The hallway!"
The woman beside me shouted.
"We can scoot the desks and use them for cover."
I nodded and slowly pushed my desk, which was acting as a shield as the rest of the ceiling seemed to rumble and shake. The broken glass was now being replaced by more dangerous burning chemicals. Those who were under their desks were given second-degree burns as we all shouted for them to take cover and move. The hallway felt like a lifetime away. I pushed the desk slowly, doing my best to time the pattern of the falling chemicals in glass. My hands were already burned from the hot toxins, and my shins were bleeding. "I just need to get out of here," I resolved as I pushed toward the door. Some of the others were fighting for the exit, trying to shove through and pull their desks along. I knew there would be no way we could escape as long as we were shackled down. Then I looked up at the burning acid and had a horrible realization.
We need to let the chemicals burn through these cuffs,
I told the girl. I held my arm at a specific angle and then scooted my desk toward the proper position. I bit my tongue and held in a scream as the torturous acid hit my skin and the metal at the same time. It only took 10 seconds for me to be free. At the same time, I ran through the door, urging the others to do the same. The girl managed to pull through with only minor burns, along with 3 others. Then we heard a strange clang and realized the classroom door was sealed shut. The ones who didn't make it out were now slamming their heads against the door, trying to wiggle the knob, but it was pointless. Next, we watched through the window as the vents reversed flow and sucked the remaining people in the class toward the ceiling. It was like watching a real twister take up houses. All of them slammed against the roof of the classroom as we watched from the safety of the hallway. And just like that, the nightmarish event seemed over, and I was standing in the hallway looking down at my burnt, shaking hands. The other survivors were turning their attention to our new location, a long tile hallway that seemed to connect to at least a dozen other classrooms just like ours. Much like us, others had escaped hellish classrooms at the last minute and were trying their best to cope and recover in the hall. We all shared the same beaten and confused expression. None of us were sure where we were or how we got here.
Attention, class of 2021. Please make your way to the main auditorium for a word from our principal,
a voice said over the intercom. Then the lights in the hallway came on fully to illuminate the path toward the right. I looked to the others for ideas, uncertain what we should do. There was an emergency exit nearby, but it didn't take a genius to assume it was sealed shut. So instead, all of us shuffled our feet down the hallway, following the guiding light to our next torture chamber. We soon arrived at what looked like a cafeteria with long tables, all arranged with simple school breakfasts. Packaged donuts, boxed milk, fruit bowls. At least 30 meals were lined up and ready for us as we entered the room. A couple of survivors went to check the exits, none of which had any windows toward the outside, while the rest of us settled and I decided to eat. Surprisingly, the food was delicious and fresh. Our captors must want us somewhat healthy, I said as I carefully opened the milk. My hands were still shaking. Then I saw a shadow cross the back curtain of the stage that overlooked the cafeteria. Immediately I jumped and pointed. A few others saw it too.
Who goes there?
One man shouted. The shadow paused. It looked unusually tall. Then we heard a strange, obnoxious laugh. A second later, the curtain pushed back to reveal a costume mascot. A large stuffed animal that resembled a walrus with a goofy cartoon smile and enormous floppy arms. From the center of the stage came a microphone that rose toward the walrus's mouth.
Well, what a squeaky clean group you are. Welcome, class of 2021. Welcome to final school,
it announced happily. I couldn't tell for sure if the thing was a robot or a person in a suit.
Today has been fun, but don't forget, here at final school, the fun can only last until the bell rings. And then it's time to learn.
Are you for real? What is this?
One man asked. He abruptly jumped toward the stage, ready to attack the mascot. A moment later, 2 children pushed their way out from the curtain and stood in the way of his attack. It made the man pause in confusion, and that was all it took. One kid whipped out what looked like a cattle prod and struck the man straight in his chest with it. He flew back hard to the tile floor, coughing and wheezing. Then a few other children appeared alongside the mascot. All of them wore generic uniforms, and all of them looked emotionally disconnected from whatever the hell was going on.
Remember to play nice.
The walrus chuckled. Just as he finished talking, we heard a buzz, and the doors to the cafeteria unsealed themselves.
Recess!
The kids all squealed as they ran back behind the curtains, out of sight. All of us who had survived the initial insanity gave each other a long stare. Then we bolted for the doors. I could see sunlight. I was ready to taste fresh air. But it was a mirage. The moment we stepped out onto the playground, I suddenly realized I wasn't looking at the sky at all. It was some strange reflective surface that covered the entire surrounding area.
It's like we're trapped in a giant fishbowl,
one man realized. I got a good look at the playground. There was plenty of equipment, all of which seemed to be in good working order, and a long, tall fence with barbed wire that surrounded us on all sides. Just as the last survivor came out, the cafeteria door slammed shut. No entry until the bell rings, a sign on the doors read as we looked around and tried to get our bearings.
This has got to be some kind of crazy dream. What is this, Lord of the Flies?
A woman asked as she approached a tall juniper tree growing near the center of the playground. There were names carved on it, hundreds of them, and tally marks. Counting the days stuck in here, I realized as I saw that they covered the entire base of the tree. Then we heard a strange whirring noise, and we watched as some of the equipment seemed to move on its own, as if someone were using it.
Something tells me this is going to be worse than before,
the first man said as the ground below us started to shift from grass to sand. One man stood there watching as it happened, realizing he was sinking just as I climbed onto a jungle gym.
It's quicksand!
I shouted to the others. Everyone frantically ran as the sand started to swallow people whole. Half of us made it to different pieces of equipment, using them as lifelines until the strange sand disappeared. Then we heard a bell from the cafeteria ring and saw the children standing there, beckoning us back inside. I cautiously touched the ground, looking at all the different splotches of blood trailing across the grounds, and held my breath. Something told me there would not be a graduation ceremony anytime soon. We were lined up on a brick wall, with bleachers facing opposite us in what looked like an old-school gymnasium. This entire place had been built to resemble the types of places we went to as children, but I knew it couldn't be the same thing, considering all the insane shit we had endured thus far. There were still plenty of us alive, but from the moment we stepped into the gym, I realized that probably wouldn't last long. The children who seemingly were in charge of this place lined up on either side of the squeaky clean tile floor. All of them held a bright, shiny red leather ball. I knew immediately what we were going to play, even as one boy stepped up to the middle and held the ball up.
PE will include dodgeball, jump rope, and then a physical fitness class. Remember to do your best.
I was so sore from the other incidents that I wondered if I would even have the ability to make it through these unscathed, but I knew I didn't have a choice.
We work together. We can make it out of here,
the petite girl next to me said as a whistle blew. A second later, the spheres the children were holding changed from harmless ordinary dodgeballs to spiky, dangerous urchin-like objects. I knew one hit from those sharp protrusions would likely kill us if it struck a vital organ. Immediately, the children began to hurl the dense weapons toward us. The heavy balls bounced and moved across the gym floor with surprising ease. We had little chance to do much else besides run.
Toward the bleachers!
One man shouted excitedly. A woman beside him was struck in the head with a spiky object, the full force of the needles piercing her face and knocking her down. As soon as it did, I noticed that the needles seemed to latch onto her cheek, preventing her from removing it. A moment later, as we ran, I realized why. We heard a soft, rhythmic beeping noise coming from the dodgeball, It got faster and faster as I understood it was counting down. Then the latched weapon exploded directly on the woman's face, killing her instantly. A man to the right of us was a little luckier, if you consider the loss of a limb better than dying. His right leg was blown up by the force of another object. As he hobbled and crawled toward the bleachers, he begged the children to stop their onslaught. They all looked at him with emotionless eyes and then raised their weapons, smashing them down on his pleading body. We turned away before the explosion caused his innards to scatter across the gym.
This is madness!
A woman snarled as she rushed toward one of the children. I watched as the dodgeball struck her straight in the chest, but she kept running, tackling one of the children. To my horror, the bomb went off, killing them both. Then a sharp alarm noise came overhead, and all of the children stopped what they were doing. A moment later, the mascot entered, the ridiculous costumed creature waddling over to where the kid had died to examine the scene. It occurred to me that the children seemed to be in awe of the mascot, as though awaiting its orders. Was it the one really in control here?
Looks like all of you will be getting detention,
It said in that same null voice. Was it even human?
Enough of this! Who's in charge here?
One man snapped. He stepped toward the walrus boldly, and I fully expected the children to attack again. Instead, the stuffed walrus held up a flipper and kept them at bay, remarking,
All class members who make it to the end of the day will be hearing an important message from the principal at our awards ceremony.
I think this thing is just a fucking robot,
the man commented. I realized I felt silly for not even thinking of that a moment ago, and watched as the walrus left with the remains of the child, perhaps to go be cremated somewhere. Whoever was running the show clearly cared a little about the kids that were here, but why none of them seemed to be remotely acting like regular children was beyond me. Before I really had a chance to ponder it, the main kid in charge announced we were beginning the next activity.
Please choose a partner for jump rope.
I looked toward the girl, figuring that with her slim figure, it was a safe bet she could make it through to the next game. I'm John, by the way. I offered my hand to her.
What does it matter? We're probably going to die in here anyway,
she said, refusing my friendship. But she added,
I'm only going to partner with you to make sure I make it to the next activity alive.
The others still alive did the same. We were placed in the center of the floor, and the children brought out normal-looking ropes that extended between our feet. As an added challenge, they next bound our feet with chains, and one older girl in the group commented,
We want you to act as a team.
As they came up to me, I got a good look at the boy chaining me down and saw that he had a tattoo on his ankle. What's your name? I whispered to him.
Those sort of things don't matter here,
he answered. I tried to look for some spark of humanity left in them, and wondered briefly if any of these kids were even real. Was the entire facility run by lifelike drones? The whistle pierced the air a second later, and the rope began to move. Quickly, my partner and I jumped, and I matched her rhythm, worried about what would happen if we missed. A moment later, the rope caught on fire. The burning heat made me begin to sweat as the kids strategically made their rope move faster at a steady pace. The girl and I did well for a short minute, but then as they began to speed up, the flames hit our ankles almost every jump. It made me want to double over in pain. Two women behind us both tripped on the rope, were burnt badly, and fell to the floor, begging the children to stop.
Where are your parents? Why are you doing this?
Thankfully, it seemed death was not their immediate fate, as the children moved on to other participants and started to perform double dutch with their other members, making it twice as hard to avoid the flaming rope as they sped up. I could hardly keep going after 2 minutes, and the heat seemed to get even more intense. Finally, after about half of our group was hit by the blazing weapon, they moved on to the next activity. All of the remaining adults who hadn't been burnt were told to wait in the locker room for further instructions. As we huddled inside the tight space and the doors were locked, I realized that this was the first time since the playground that we were all alone.
If anyone has any ideas on how to get out of here, it's appreciated,
the girl commented as she rubbed her sore ankles. I was in so much pain my entire body felt numb. I had no idea if that was a blessing or a curse, to be honest.
That weird mascot mentioned an award ceremony later, probably back at the cafeteria. But I think I saw a main office near the front of the building. I'll bet you anything there's a control room up there. Someone must be in charge telling these children what to do,
a man said.
And how do you suggest we get there? Seems every move we make is monitored,
I asked.
We work together just like I said. These are just kids. They can't stop us if we use force,
the girl offered. A woman next to her shuffled her feet uncomfortably.
I don't know if I can justify harming children. It's likely they have been brainwashed to obey. We shouldn't be hurting them even if they are doing this to us.
I felt the same but didn't say a word. It was clear the majority was ready for this nightmare to end.
If we can get the people in charge to end this idiocy, maybe it will save the kids too. The needs of the many will be accomplished by just a few,
the man argued.
You're just speculating. We don't even know if any of this will work,
another said. Soon the locker room burst into an argument. The doors slammed open a second later, and one of the older children gave us a glare.
The physical fitness test will now begin,
she announced, leading us back to the gym. All of the adults who had suffered from burn injuries were gone, and now, in the middle of the floor, I saw that the actual tile was missing. I rubbed my eyes to be sure I wasn't imagining things. It was, in fact, cut off by what looked like a bottomless hole, a chasm that cut through the whole area. I tried to look down and see if there was anything below, but it seemed to stretch for miles, perhaps into some furnace. Dangling over the pit was a rope, which seemed to be covered with oil to make the climb even more difficult. Did the children even understand they were literally making us risk our lives? I was placed in the front of the line and waited as the bell rang. The rope was only a few feet in front of me, but I still had to make a running start for it. Leaping out above the pit, I gripped onto the slippery rope and quickly started to climb. Even with the oily surface, it was possible for me to ascend, but not easily. I could hear the others actually cheering me on as I tried not to look down. But just when I thought I might make it, the game changed, and something fell through the roof vents above me. Needles. Sharp pointed ends stuck my head and hands as I clung to the rope and shivered in pain. It wouldn't be long before I lost my grip entirely. My only chance was to try and swing back toward the edge. I started to shift my body weight as I slid down the rope, my hands sweaty. The onslaught of fallen needles made my nerves begin to stress and ache. Just as I made the third swing, I let go, barely grabbing the edge. The others rushed to help, but the children blocked them. If I was going to survive, it would have to be on my own. Desperately, I clawed my way up the side, gasping for breath as I collapsed to the ground and looked down at the pit.
This is insane. I can barely even stand up from this torture,
I moaned as I looked at my shaking palms. The needles had hurt more than I realized. The children looked at me, and then the oldest one in charge ordered,
"Take him to the nurse."
Before I knew what was happening, I was escorted out of the gym by several larger kids toward the office that the one man had speculated we might be able to use as an escape. A bag was placed over my head before they marched me down the hall, shoving me rudely as they moved forward. Eventually, I was placed in a chair and my hands were bound with a zip tie. Then the bag was removed, and I found myself staring at another adult. Someone who was running this hellish drama. She gave me a fiendish smirk and said,
Looks like you thought you were going home early.
The nurse administered some kind of shot directly into my bloodstream without even bothering to tell me what it was for. As I watched the needle press into my body, I was sure that I was about to die. Instead of a quick death like the other adults here, it would be slow and torturous, and this strange woman would revel in my suffering. Immediately, I started to sweat and feel faint, my lips clammy as I begged her to stop. The entire room felt dizzy, and then at last, she tossed the needle aside into a sharps container and commented,
My, you are a squealer, aren't you?
I was panting, hardly able to see or speak coherently, but it didn't matter. She was going to make me listen to her strange ramblings.
You have been brought here for a reason, Student 6091, and that is to prove yourself worthy of readmission to society. Given your skills so far in our school activities, you stand a high probability of being able to graduate from our program.
She commented as she pulled a file from a nearby metallic cabinet and read off my life as though I had died long ago.
John Redders, age 32, a single father living in the suburbs of Chicago. You have 2 children, David and Susanna, ages 8 and 4 respectively. You work as an auto mechanic and enjoy chess matches and hiking in your spare time.
She commented as she slid the profile across to me.
Does all this sound accurate?
Despite how parched I was, I managed to give her a whispered reply.
I have no idea what you want, but once I get out of these bonds, I swear I will kill you, bitch.
She leaned over toward me, smiling coyly before smacking me across the face with her gloved hand.
You will learn that we do not tolerate insubordination of any kind in this facility. Do I need to remind you why you are here?
She snapped. She turned the folder over to the next page, which showed photographs of me having drinks with friends, spending time at work during long hours, and not coming home to be with my family. Things I had felt guilty for over the past 6 months. Bad habits I was struggling to cope with. And here they were on display as crimes, my sins that had landed me in this hell.
You are fortunate that the charges aren't more severe, or we wouldn't even be having this conversation. You have forsaken your family, Mr. Redders. You have fallen into a lifestyle of pleasure rather than responsibility. As a result, you squander what money you earn, and your children starve. You are a poor excuse for a father, and therefore unfit to return to being a parent until you are taught a proper education.
I didn't fully comprehend what she was saying, but I gathered that this prison was a place for people like me to be rehabilitated, under whatever strict guidelines they enforced. A second chance according to their standards to be a better person, and if we failed to be strong enough, then a deadly fate awaited us. I knew her logic about health and recovery and being a good parent did not line up with the atrocities that I had seen here so far, but I was too frightened to correct her.
When is this graduation ceremony?
I asked.
Tonight, after final period, we will gather our students together in the band hall for a celebration and announce the graduates. But to make it there, I needed to make sure you were on equal footing with the others, hence the need for your vaccination.
I looked toward the needle, wondering what exactly she had dosed me with, as a bell rang and the nurse stood up, pleasantly smiling.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Redders. I hope to see you again tonight. I think if you apply yourself to your education, you will go far.
I was marched by the children back down the hall, confused and disoriented even without a bag over my head, as we passed by what looked like class photographs of previous grads. As I paused to look at the numerous alumni, it occurred to me this secretive program had been running for quite some time undetected. Who could be handling all of the finances, and how did they even find people to be candidates for their experimental prison? Another sobering fact was evident in the photographs. Less than half a dozen persons were in each picture. The rest of the seats empty, meaning the chance of survival here was slim, perhaps nigh impossible. Still, I had to think of my own 2 children and fight to survive as long as I could, even if it did mean fighting against the others, I thought, as I was escorted into an art studio. There were perhaps only 9 of us left, and as soon as I entered the classroom, each of them viewed me with new suspicion. It was easy to guess why. I had been given special privileges to not go through with the remainder of the fitness test, and that must mean they thought I was involved in whatever was going on. The children ordered me to take a seat near one of the easels. Our teacher, the strange emotionalist costumed walrus, immediately gave us instructions on the assignment.
Each of you is filled with inspiration, aspiring dreams that are waiting to burst forth. Here we get the chance to express ourselves and show our achievements on the canvas,
He explained as the children locked the doors. Whatever was about to happen, I knew good and well it was not going to be as pleasant as he claimed.
Under your desk, you will find the tools you need to create a masterpiece. Something that truly speaks to us and helps us to see what type of artist and person you really are,
The mascot said. All of us reached down to take a small black bag from the underside of the desk, unzipping it to reveal razor blades and other sharp objects typically used for self-harm. The costumed mascot explained.
You have 30 minutes to put your sweat, tears, and especially your blood into your work. Those who put in the most effort will get to move forward to the next class. So try your hardest and work for a better grade than your classmates.
Immediately, a timer started above his head. I looked at the objects in horror, realizing that he expected us to actually cut into our flesh and let our own blood act as paint for the project. The others hesitated and started to use the razors on their skin, wincing and shrieking in pain as their blood dribbled onto the paper. One woman had a different type of masterpiece in mind, though. She immediately lashed out toward one of the other adults with the sharp weapons, stabbing them to the ground. Surprisingly, the costume mascot did nothing to stop it. After she killed her art partner, the woman announced,
I found out she'd been sleeping with my husband. So this is my artist's depiction of what I want to do to him.
She spit on the bleeding corpse, even as the mascot nodded and announced,
You get a 90. Head for the music room and enjoy your extra recess.
She dropped the weapon and stepped over the body, leaving the rest of us confused and befuddled, but also no less suspicious of each other.
What about you, John? What did you do?
The petite woman I had talked to earlier asked, as she held the blade safely in between her knuckles. I couldn't tell if she intended to harm me or the others as well. None of us could be certain what the others were capable of. As I looked down at the bloody mess, though, I began to feel dizzy and stumbled across the room to vomit. It must be the side effects of whatever the nurse gave me, designed to make me incapable of completing this task, I realized, as I vomited in the trash can several times and felt the room begin to spin. One man tried to approach to help, but I pushed him away, uncertain if those in charge would view it as cheating. I needed to act fast, and the only thing I could think was to use the blade against myself and threaten to hurt myself.
If this is really supposed to be about rehabilitation, then let the rest live. Let us get out of here,
I demanded. The children actually seemed to show emotion for a split second as I held the knife against my wrist where I knew the most blood could be spilled. It was a bluff, but I needed to see if my guess was right about this demented facility. Would they allow me to survive simply because of their twisted moral code?
That will be enough.
The mascot bellowed, motioning for everyone in the class to stop. He went from desk to look at the artwork, supposedly grading each and every one of us as though it really mattered. It felt like our survival was going to be the toss of the dice. Myself, the petite woman, and 2 others were told we could head to the music hall. I knew that meant the others would be executed, and as the knife was wrestled from my hand, I considered trying to stand up for them. I have to be able to make it back to my own family, I kept reminding myself as I felt the strange vaccine the nurse had given me start to take effect. If I didn't push forward, it would all be for nothing. Somehow I got the impression the others who were told to leave had the same guilty conscience. We were all led away reluctantly, even as the art studio doors closed, and we heard the ones left behind beg for their lives. A roar of gunfire and paintballs filled the air, and we heard their screams grow higher, almost to a crescendo, until at last everything became silent. Then paint and blood mixed together drained from under the door, a sickening feeling settling in the bottom of my stomach as I realized that the four of us were the only ones still standing for this final round. We were taken to a music hall where the children told us to pick an instrument. I found myself hardly able to stand up from another bout of nausea. Then, as I finally reached the music stand near the middle of the class, I saw the playbook was open to a song that told me my suspicion was right. We were nearly at the end of this mad game. They were going to force us to play the ceremonial orchestra, followed by a funeral procession theme. Slow, soothing music began to play as all of us took our seats and watched the children line up against the wall. Despite the pretense that everything was fine, I knew good and well that only a few of us would survive this final test. I didn't know the people alongside me in this class, but I still couldn't believe that all of them might be dead in a few minutes. As the music got a little faster, the children ordered us to start playing, and we all did our best to keep up. I've never even had a talent for music, but I tried my hardest to appease them even as I felt the room beginning to move. Everything was suddenly shifting around as we kept playing, the room rotating as we saw behind the walls a row of strange small holes that had sharp spikes poking straight out. I knew that if we stayed where we were sitting at the moment, we would be impaled in only a matter of seconds, so I immediately tried to stand, only for something to shock me and cause me to collapse back in my seat.
"The performance mustn't stop,"
a child said as the room kept rotating. We all reluctantly played, and as we did, I noticed that the room began to move the other way. Someone was actually getting the music right.
Keep playing correctly,
I shouted to the woman. She had a trombone, and I could tell that she was exhausted, but we couldn't afford any mistakes. One man was about to be hit by the deadly darts and tried to flee, only for the agonizing shock to cripple him and cause him to flail backward toward the weapon. He screamed in pain as the spikes pierced him but didn't kill him. We kept playing to the end of the song to keep the rest of us alive. As the chorus came to an end, the room stopped moving and the children cheered. Some even suggested an encore. I could tell that the woman who had kept us alive those few minutes wouldn't have the strength to play again, and thankfully the encore was not required. To my surprise, as we were moved from the band hall toward the mess hall, I saw the nurse who had tried to kill me waiting for us with what looked like awards. Since there were only 3 of us left, I was hoping this meant all of us would get the chance to make it out of here. But I noticed that she was only carrying 2 awards. One of us would be put to the test a final time, I realized, as we were told to stand at the center of the stage.
"All of you have managed to come so far in this program, and we can't thank you enough for all of your hard work to reach the top of your class,"
the nurse announced. As she was talking, I saw that the auditorium was filling up with children. I was surprised to see that there were so many of them. At first, it was just a dozen. Then I realized that there were hundreds of them. Did they all live here in this underground hell? How did they survive?
"Before we pass out the awards, I think it's time for a quick snack for all of you,"
the nurse said as the doors at the back of the cafeteria opened, and I saw more adults rolling in carts. I held my nose as the stench of rotten meat overpowered me, and I saw that they were actually being fed the corpses of all the other adults that hadn't made it this far. The children didn't even wait for a serving bell. They growled and snapped at one another to grab a piece of the chopped up bodies and chew it as fast as they could. I felt like I was about to throw up again by watching the cannibalistic display. Now I knew what these children were being turned into. Monsters. I didn't care to have any other questions answered, too sickened by the realization that if we had lost, we would be in that meal as well. To my surprise, the petite woman who had been here since the beginning reached for my hand. Her eyes filled with tears as we listened to the children eat the flesh of our competition.
My name is Sam, by the way,
she whispered as her lips trembled and the children finished the last bits of meat. For but a moment there was a connection between us, a mutual understanding that we didn't deserve this treatment despite whatever issues we had in our real lives. Nothing could even come close to this level of hell. And then the nurse got out a raffle ball and started to spin it, the numbers clattering around as the hungry killer children waited to hear who would be crowned the champion. I didn't have to guess what would happen to the loser.
Our graduate in this class is none other than John Redders. Step up here, John,
she announced. Immediately, the children moved towards Sam and the others, ready to pull them down and eat them alive. I tried my best to hold on to her for as long as I could, her screaming and kicking the entire time.
You will forget about this place soon enough, John. I knew you would make it. Come, as we get you ready to leave, there is one final thing I need to show you,
the nurse ordered. I tried to keep from looking as the children trampled and attacked my friends. I was so traumatized by the event, I found myself shaking as I moved toward the back hallway.
I'm sure by now you recognize that this entire process was orchestrated to make you a better person, but we couldn't have done this without people that were in predicaments just like yours, down on their luck, angry with loved ones, scorned. We want to offer you the chance to be able to recommend a future student to us,
she said, passing me a small pamphlet.
You mean someone to send here to die?
I realized.
If they can survive our tests, they will be fine,
she commented softly. She soon led me to what looked like an old elevator that had a key code to prevent anyone from entering. As she got me ready to leave, she added,
Just think over all that you have learned here, and I'm sure you will see the benefits to our program.
She then injected me with another dosage, a strong sedative this time, and pushed me into the elevator. I couldn't even open my mouth to scream as the door slammed shut, and I found myself getting dizzy. The last thing I remember was the elevator rising toward the surface. When I did wake up, I was in the middle of a heavily wooded area. It felt surreal to imagine that everything I experienced was real. The pamphlet the nurse had given me was more than enough proof. In addition, the wound on my wrist was all stitched up. I walked for about a mile to the road, and from there I hitchhiked.
Where to?
A passing motorist asked. They actually looked a bit nervous to help me, and it was then I realized I still had the clothes from the prison underground. I probably looked like an escaped convict. I told them to take me to the nearest police station. I told them my story from start to finish. I showed them the wound on my wrist. I also insisted that they could check my clothes for fingerprints and gave them my pamphlet. There was nothing that matched any known criminals in their database. It suddenly occurred to me that this was likely why they had trained the children to be their foot soldiers. None of them would be traced, and likely all of them had been kidnapped at infancy. I thanked the officers for their time and managed to get a ride home from one of them. I was desperate to see my children again. Once I got home, I made a promise to them that I would be a better father. I can only hope that time will erase some of my awful memories of school.